Hello everyone, sorry about any noises in the background. I've got the windows open because for some reason they've got the steam heat really high in my building and it's really boiling in here, and I'm dressed for work, so there you go. I'm about to go over the common errors that I saw in your papers for paper number 1 and tell you how you can correct those for the next time. All right, this is where we're going to start. Many of you had trouble with the heading. Even though it is in the paper template and it tells you exactly how it needs to be done, it needs to be done like this, with your name, the course and section number, the paper number, the assignment name, and the due date. Not your name, my name, because I already know my name, the course and section number, and the due date. Because I do need to know what paper it is that I'm creating, believe it or not, because some of your files aren't named correctly there either. Just saying. A couple of other errors. And by the way, some of these sentences are taken directly from your papers, and I've not identified anybody, so please don't out yourself in the comments below. You know who you are. I'm not trying to shame you, which is why I'm not saying who you are. I'm just saying that these are errors that came up. For example, in a sentence like, "You were watching Letterkenny with your pals the other day," you would not put Letterkenny in quotation marks because it is the name of a television show. If you were talking about a specific episode of that show, you would put it in quotation marks. Instead, this should be put in italics. And in fact, I'm showing you exactly above what you would do to italicize that. Similarly, if you have a sentence like, "The article, 'We're all going to die,' gives a rather slanted view about our current situation," that would not be italicized because it is an article. And so it actually goes in quotation marks with any sort of punctuation at the end of the title also inside those quotation marks. A few other problems, and these were pretty common, so I'm a little worried about this. Many of you were putting a comma after the book title, 1984, whether you wrote it out or whether you used numerals, but you were putting a comma right after it before the verb for the sentence. If I were to read this aloud, it would read, "The book 1984 is a novel that describes a world where the fascists have won." Pardon me a moment. Just because I'm recording this doesn't mean I'm going to edit out all the errors. I am going to edit this one, though. If you find yourself wanting to put a comma after this, don't. The only time you would do that would be something like this. The reason why you would do that is because in that sentence, if you were to lift this part out, you would still have a complete sentence, because look, that's a full sentence. So anything we put in it, oops, I did it wrong. Anything we put in it is extra information. That's why you put commas around it. Same thing with this sort of thing. Although 1984 was written decades ago, it is still coming true today. You would not need a comma after this. You absolutely would not need a comma after that. By the way, be careful about mixing up although and however, because while however can be used at the beginning of a sentence on its own, although is probably going to be the start of a dependent clause. So make sure you use it that way. Wow, there's a lot of traffic today. I'm sorry about all the noise. All right. Another issue was with quotations and with introducing those quotations. Some of you got into the habit of just dropping a quotation into your paper without actually introducing it. And you do need to say who said it, who they are, why it's important, and all of that, whether you're doing a quotation or a paraphrase. For instance, if you were to do this, this wouldn't be the right way to do it. Instead, you would do something like this. President Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And because we've already used his name in the credit tag, we could get rid of this and get rid of the citation because that serves as a citation unless you're doing a page number. Now, here's an example of someone who did everything right. In an interview with NPR's Anya Kamenetz, authored, except for that, that's my fault, sorry. In an interview with NPR's Anya Kamenetz, author James W. Lowen explains that he got the inspiration to write Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbook Got Wrong, from teaching a class at Tougaloo, yeah, of course, it's Mississippi, Tougaloo College in Mississippi, and was saddened to hear the terribly false answers from his students about basic historical facts. That may seem like a really long sentence, and your first instinct is to call it a run-on. That's not a run-on. That's well punctuated. Everything is where it needs to be. And you notice that it tells us where that is coming from, who said it, and is even including in the paraphrase why we're listening to it. Sorry, I got distracted by a dog out the window. Silly dog. All right. The other problem that people are having is using you when you mean people in general. And by the way, when I say you, I mean you. That's the difference. For example, if you're writing a sentence like, you should have the right to have an abortion in this country, here's why the you doesn't work. What if your reader is male? And let me clarify, what if your reader is cisgendered male and cannot have children and therefore cannot have an abortion? Then a sentence like this is going to be seemingly directed at a limited audience. Something like this would work though. If you, in fact, flip it around, if you live in this country, which you probably do, you should have the right to have an abortion in this country. Even that doesn't work. You'd have to do something like this. If you are a woman and you live in this country, you should have the right to have an abortion. And yes, you'd have to say cisgendered woman capable of reproduction. I know. All right. There were several fragments, such as this one. 71 years since the novel was written and 36 years after Orwell's predictions for our world. Ugh. That probably meant to go into the very next sentence, but it didn't happen because comma wasn't put there. Also, you notice that that's the correct way to do it. This isn't, and you should actually be consistent. In fact, here's the thing about numbers. This is actually correct. If a number is at the beginning of a sentence, you would actually write it out. If it's in a sentence, if it's in the sentence itself, then it needs to be numerals, as long as it doesn't take 3 or 4 words to write it. So 36 would be fine, 136 would be fine. You'd probably say 20 in words because it's one word. All right, saw a lot of this too. The book was amazing for it is time. No, the book was amazing for its time. Be careful of that. Another thing, the difference between everyday and everyday. Everyday is an adjective describing something that is habitual. If you're talking about something that happens each day, chaque jour, cada dia, then it has to be every day. People share billions of posts on the internet, yes. Now this is almost right, except for 2 problems. One, when you refer to the book, you do so in present tense. You also would not have a period here. It would instead go at the end of the sentence here. And you do not need a comma between the author and the number of the page. Also, be careful of announcement statements. Many of you did this sort of thing, so I'm not singling out one person. Even if you recognize the sentence as your own, lots of other people did this. I am comparing the similarities and differences between the events in George Orwell's 1984 and the events in today's social and political environment. Well, for one thing, that has to be italicized, but what you would say is, you wouldn't even say there are similarities and differences between the events. You'd say something like, events in George Orwell's 1984 The events in George Orwell's 1984 are similar to the events in today's social and political environment. All right, here's a pronoun problem. There's so many tasks today that could not be done without our smartphones because we have become reliant on it. It? Smartphones? It? I think you meant them. Yeah, that's what you need to do. Now, a lot of people did this too. In the novel, people are constantly being surveyed by Big Brother, which means that Big Brother is coming from house to house like a census taker and is asking you information. Believe it or not, the verb is surveilled, which I think might actually be with one L. Let's check that. It's not used very often, which is probably why many of you were not aware of it. And I've forgotten how to look up how to do spelling. Oh, okay, well, you look it up. You're the student. All right. When he is hidden, Winston is not naive enough to believe that he will not eventually be discovered. This is almost right too, except for one thing. Commas go inside quotation marks. One of the major ways Orwell's party system resembles North Korea is that they assert control and fear on their people by brainwash them to believe in their society's ideals. If they don't do their bidding, these individuals are terminated. Let's fix a few quick things. Brainwashing to believe in their society's ideals. That is the plural, and we want the possessive singular. If they don't do their bidding, these individuals, who's the they there and who's the they there? We can't tell. But since we're talking about the party system in North Korea, that would take care of it. Okay? However, the idea that an individual's big brother knew every action they took, never left their side, and occasionally was aware of their siblings' thoughts, the dynamic is highly unlikely. So whenever I say you'd have to read something aloud, this is the sort of sentence I mean. You'd have to figure out how to fix that, because the idea is interesting, because it's saying that the reason why Big Brother is called Big Brother because he's supposed to be a sibling, but the idea that your sibling would know everything that you know the way Big Brother does is unlikely. So we'd get rid of this and we would do this. For example, instead of saying bad, comma, they say I'm good, comma, which makes everyone unaware of opposition in life. Good. Now here's some of the things you need to be careful of. Word choice, a lot of you are using the wrong words. Missing words, some of your sentences were missing words, vital words that were needed. Awkward phrasings, if you had them, I told you to read them aloud. Run-ons, I mark them as such. And some of you had either weak transitions or no transitions. Please be careful of that. Transitions are very important. So all I can say is, be careful. Cuidado. Caución. Yes? Yes. All right, I need to get to a meeting, believe it or not. So if you have any questions about any of this, email me your questions, leave comments below. But remember, when you leave comments to let me know that you saw this, don't leave the typical type of YouTube comment. Yeah, instead, ask questions, answer questions for your peers, something like that, okay? All right, we will see you next time. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.